Far too often, LGBTQ plus business owners believe they have to choose between authenticity and being successful. Through these real-life stories, LGBTQ plus listeners aspiring for success can gain valuable insights to navigate their path to being both queer and successful. Hello, everyone. It is me, Hunter J. McNair, your hostess with the mostest, back again for this week's episode of Queer and Successful. Now, this week, I am joined by my good Judy, my good pal, Kimberly Ruley, out of Pennsylvania. Kimberly has been in real estate since 2006, and she is a powerhouse. Like myself, she is a KWU University approved trainer, so she trains sales agents and people across the country. Now, if you have not checked out queerandsuccessful.com to see what we are doing and what we've called the Success Prism Labs, you might be missing out. So check out that when you have a chance. But otherwise, let's take a listen in on the conversation we're having today with Kimberly Ruley on seller price reductions, which is really an amazing conversation about setting expectations with our customers and our clients. Take a listen. Thank you all for being here. And I'm super excited to begin this conversation with my good Judy, my good pal, Kimberly Ruley. How are you, Kimberly?
I'm doing well. How are you?
You know, just another manic Monday in the world of real estate.
Wish it was Sunday.
Wish it was Sunday. Wish it was Sunday. You know, sometimes people ask me like, you know, it's Tuesday, how are you? And I'm like, you know, just another manic Tuesday, as it may be. Why don't you, Kimberly, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. So, Kimberly Ruley, I am the rainmaker of the Ruley Group. We are based in Philadelphia and we service the city of Philadelphia, the surrounding suburbs, and the state of Delaware. I've been in the business since 2006. I've been with Keller Williams since 2006. I've been at Keller Williams Mainline since 2006. So I've never moved offices, which makes me kind of a unicorn, I think, to a lot of people. Kind of like an OG at my office. Been through a couple locations as well. I also am a KWU approved trainer. I have been in that space for a little over a year now. I teach several courses that are near and dear. I had the opportunity in February to facilitate a panel at Family Union, which was also very exciting, my first one, that we talked about price reductions as well. I'm a mother of three. I have a 14-year-old who is going into high school.
Fun time.
Yeah. And I have a set of twins that are 8 and they may trickle down here. Who knows? Because school is up for us. I've been on ALC, I've been to Bold, I've done all the things, honestly. Family Union, Mega Camp, all the things. So I'm really happy to be here today.
Oh, I'm excited to have you, sincerely. And we haven't had enough time to connect, and we're kind of, you know, both in the KWU ecosphere, if you may. And I remember you having that panel at Family Reunion, but I'm pretty sure mine ran at the same time, so I wasn't able to do yours. But you're talking about, and what we're talking really about today is something that we all should be having really deeper conversations around, which is, you know, price reductions and seller pricing in general, because, you know, we talked about this briefly before we started, but the market is seemingly changing quickly throughout the country in different ways, and less, I guess, in certain parts like where you are up north, but a lot in the South. I'm hearing a lot of it in the West as well. And, you know, as good as I do, as someone, I've been around for 10 years, you since 2006. I don't have I don't know what the math is on that.
19. This will be my 19th year in
19?
September.
Oh my gosh, it is 19 years. So 19 years, right? Like you and I have seen the pendulum, right? This kind of pendulum of how the market shifts and how it sways. And there are a lot of people who've been doing this for only 5 years, which only five, that's a long time in this industry. But 5 years ago, price reductions weren't having to be a conversation because we were in that beautiful pandemic market, right? Where
Yeah.
where you didn't really matter how you priced it.
No, you just need a pulse. You could
Right.
say.
You just needed a pulse, right? And now we're kind of in this conversation again, right? How are we actually having pricing conversations with sellers? And so I kind of want to start with the big picture on this, right? Why do you think now, just in general, agents hesitate to recommend price reductions when clearly, especially now, there is data to support that?
I think part of that is, like you said, we're coming out of the pandemic where skill was not needed.
Mm,
And now where skill is needed, there are folks just who have not had the opportunity to learn that skill, so they see it as confrontational, right? They don't want to have the conversation. They don't want to have to worry about objections and how to combat that. They're not practicing scripts. And so they have this like aversion to asking the question when, like you said, the data is there. I mean, a quick MLS search, if you do some of your MLS reports and statistics, it's all there to just about the way that you're presenting it to
mm.
the client that makes the difference. But I think it's the skill is that what's missing, and people are afraid of that.
Well, and it's so funny about finding that skill is that I started to see when our market started to shift here, right? And this was actually, I could have told you it was shifting 3 years ago here, 2.5 years ago here. I would notice that there were agents who themselves were kind of behind on the market. And so it's almost like this, like they don't understand that they're also behind and they're not getting real with this conversation,
Mhm.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
And the data is supporting it. And I mean, what are some of your suggestions for how we need to start? And we're going to dive into this, but like just right now, if you're like, what's the thing we need to do to get going on having conversations about price reductions? What does that look like?
I think it starts with the listing appointments. You
Mm,
have to set the expectation up front. And then you have to continue to talk about it when you're having conversations with clients. I mean, sometimes I will tell people, okay, this is what it looked like for this week. We're going to give it another few days, but on our next conversation, we're going to be talking about adjusting the price. And I
mm.
never use the word reduction because that for them in their mind, they hear reduction and they hear less money in my pocket, right? And we know that's what it is. But sometimes words matter. So I use a different word. So I think it always starts out at the listing appointment. That's one. And then the other part of that is researching your market. So you always know like what's coming. You can pretty much look at now compared to last year and predict how it's going to go just by looking at those details. So I think those two go hand in hand.
I would agree. I think when we talk about anything with business, right, it's all about expectation setting. And I think that where people what people get hung up on, I get my only imagination is people get hung up because they have so many things to set expectations on. And that's why we're getting paid the big bucks to do this,
Right.
right? Because
Yeah.
we're not the tugboats, we're the lighthouse for people.
Mhm.
And so we have to do what we have to do to shine the light on whatever situation they should be in. And setting that tone from day one, I think is definitely really, really crucial.
Oh, but there are a lot of tugboats out there,
Oh,
Hunter,
I know, I know.
that
I
are
mean,
just trying to pull it along, trying to just get this listing sold.
well, it's fascinating, and I know what the KPA is, the Keller Williams Personality Assessment. With there's this one personality line about accommodation, like how yeah, it's about adaptability, how adaptable someone is,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when someone has a super high adaptability or a super low adaptability, that tugboat can go different ways. So if you're overtly accommodating, you're too nice and you don't want to have the conversation about price reductions because you're trying to accommodate their needs. Where if you're on the other end of that spectrum and you're not accommodating, you might be pulling them into a brick wall with being stubborn about what the price should be because you think the price is right. And the
Right.
reality is we have to kind of live in the middle of that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
kind of figure out how to toe both lines. So yeah, it's definitely tough. I mean, sellers right now, I'm sure, are having more of these kind of like mindset hurdles as well, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they're used to, quote unquote, used to the market being better.
Yeah.
Our mindset and our perception of the market is 6 months behind. You know that a seller's mindset is about 6 months behind
Or more. Yeah.
or more, right? What are
Mhm.
some common objections that you think people run into when bringing up a price reduction, and how do you think you navigate that without losing trust? Let's assume you haven't set that expectation.
Okay, so if you haven't set the expectation and you have that initial conversation, I think some of the things that the seller will say is, well, my neighbor's house sold for X.
Hmm.
And then you go look up neighbor's house and it was like 2 years ago, right?
Right. Yeah.
So then you're talking about the market now. I'm in this market right now where I can still go 6 months back. I actually could go a little bit further back and I'm probably okay because of where our pricing is. But if you're in a market where it's like, I mean, even back in 2022, 21, I was going 3 months back max because things were so rapidly changing. So it's about having that conversation with the seller. I think another objection is, well, I just want to stay at this point for another 30 days.
Right.
So now we talk about chasing the market, right? There's that graphic of the market is here, you're here, and now so you come down, and now here comes the market, and we never meet. So you have that conversation. Another one is um, just left my head. Oh my gosh.
There's always so many, like, I mean,
There are,
honestly.
there are, there are.
Yeah.
Oh, but I need $200,000. I need to leave with $200,000. It's like, okay,
Hmm.
well, you can sit here and not leave with anything.
Right. Well,
Or you can look at, where we are and then let's do it. Let's break this down. Let's look at what this is and then go back to motivation. What do you need the 200,000 for?
correct. Yeah.
And try and pull on some strings there. So yeah, there could be several things that they say, but those I think are the top three. One about my neighbor's house, one about the amount of money that I need. Um, and I'm sorry, Hunter, I forgot the last one.
No,
What
I,
was
I know. I'm like, I don't remember what the middle one was either.
it?
The good thing is it's recorded and we'll find out later. The thing is, I think that's kind of fascinating and something that you kind of elaborate on, I think, is when we talk about buyers, let's think about buyers for a sec, just a millisecond, and we hear a buyer tell us that they're 6 months out. What do we normally do when a buyer tells us what we should we do when a buyer says their time frame? What's the general rule of thumb? What's your rule of thumb?
My rule is if they say they're 6 months out, I said we're not ready to start looking yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for us, it is hard to find something where I can have a seller that's looking for a 90-day closing. They almost don't exist. So
Yeah.
I'll have the conversation of, well, let's look at some of the houses that you would be interested in. Let's see how quickly they went,
Well,
right?
what I was gonna add to that is say that sometimes buyers may say 6 months, but they don't always know what 6 months looks like.
And they don't always mean 6 months because I've had times when buyers said that, and then when I followed up in a month, they already were underway, right?
Right. Right.
So you're right. Time
And
is
then
the thing.
time is a thing. And so sometimes the same thing can happen when we're talking about how much money a seller needs to net. What I'm getting at is we can't just always accept an answer to a question at surface level, right?
Mhm.
If you say, how much would you like to make off the property? And they say 200K, well, what's important to them? Like you mentioned, getting back to that motivation. What
Yep.
exactly is important about 200K? Where do we need to check back in on that? I had a conversation with the seller actually last week, which just reminded me we need to do the price reduction today. I've just had this conversation the other day with a seller because they're actually going to be upside down. They're
Mm.
going to be bringing money to the table in order to do a price reduction. But they also didn't realize that they could do that because they're first time home
Okay.
sellers, right? And so where we might make a mistake of assuming that of the ability or the capacity for a seller to make a decision or not, we have to remember to give them that ability, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it is this kind of balance of empathy and firmness through it all, right?
Yes.
In these conversations. What helps you kind of hold that line while you're still making the client feel heard?
Because I first listen.
Yeah.
I tell them my intention and then I listen to the almost always objection of why they don't think it's time for the price reduction. I
Mhm.
listen and then I pull out something that they've said. There's something usually in that in their feelings that they've said that I can pull on and say, you know what, I completely understand. I do. However, let's look at the facts. Let's look at what's going on in the market right now. what do you think about this? I explain it. What do you think about this? Because you want to get them to give the buy-in and almost feel like it was their decision, even though
Yeah, you want them
it
saying
was,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So I am I'm not like a super aggressive person, right? I'm kind of laid back. So it's like
Same.
I if you don't want to do it,
Yeah.
okay. But I'm only going to give you another couple days, but most of the time I'm trying to talk to I have a client now. We just passed a year on the market. I don't know when the last time that has ever happened to me.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
mixed use property, it's commercial, that's part of it. The neighborhood it in is another part of it. I mean, after I had it listed for 6 months, she told me, "Oh yeah, the person across the street, it took them 2 years to sell." And I'm like, "How do I know that? And why did I take this listing then?" Right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
we have slowly had conversations, and I have slowly gotten her down to where we're now at the spot that we should be. But it
Mhm.
just took a while. It took a while. I will also say that it was helpful that we got offers that she turned down, but
Mhm.
then got, a little upset later that she should have took it. So then I could take, well, if you were going to take this, let's reduce the price to this and
Right.
slowly worked her down. It took much longer than I would have liked to, but I think it's just, and now she's sticking with me because at first she said, "Oh, well, when we come to the end, I think I'm going to have to go in a different direction." And we know what that means, right? And when I talked to her last week, she was like, "Oh, I'm sticking with you." She calls me
Yeah.
girlfriend. "I'm sticking with you, girlfriend." I said, "Okay."
Well, and that kind of goes back to this shift of market and the way we have to really approach listings. Where before you could have a listing, get it, it would sell right away and it would go. And I'm sure, and I know there's people who are listening who are like, well, mine are still selling. It's not always going to be like that always. So this is still a
Mhm.
lesson because it is always going to shift. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
You know, when this kind of stuff happens, this is where your ability to be an actual listing agent, right, kicks in because if you are not prepared to have those weekly at minimum conversations with sellers, tell them everything you're doing, telling them exactly what your plan is that you're going to execute and get their buy-in on that execution at the same time, they're not going to know what you're doing and they're not going to blame the price, they're going to blame you.
You. That's correct.
Right. So
Right.
the expectations come in the beginning, like we talked about. And even if you just done that, you got to continue it throughout the process. Um,
Right. Like I
right.
talk to my sellers once a week.
Yeah,
Like
same.
I have a specific day I reach, it's usually Monday because they
Same.
keep antsy after Monday, I'm gonna be honest with you. So
Yeah.
Monday, it can be a text, it can be a phone call, it can be an email, but somehow I'm telling them what's going on. And I'm also telling them, especially when we get past like 30 days, every detail of what I'm doing. So
Right.
that they know I'm not just sitting here hoping that it sells with the sign in the yard and periodically putting a post on social media. There are other things that I'm actively doing to get this done. And
Right.
in that, when you say you've done all of this, then the only thing it can be is price, right?
Correct.
I've done all
Yeah.
these other things. So then it's an easier slide into, okay, we've done all of these things. We're not getting enough people in the door. That's what I like to say. We're not getting enough people to even cross the threshold.
Hmm.
Talk about how we get more people in. Here's the
Yeah.
data. I need you to sign this,
I
basically.
mean, now I have my own like kind of favorite go-to script or language with that, right? Where I'll say, hey, like we're not getting this, etc. And I'm curious if you have one. Like, what is kind of your like, do you have like a stat like saying, hey, we're not performing at this, and so like this is why we were doing this? Like, what's your kind of go-to with that?
Yeah, so I know it's 10 showings in 2 weeks is like the typical standard. And I
Hmm.
don't know that I verbally say that, but I do look at how many showings and I'll say, this is not enough showings to sell the house.
Right.
Period. Like we need more people. We can't sell the house if no one's coming in. No one's coming in because they're looking at the listing online and they're looking at the price and it's not lining up for them. And it could be as little as $10,000 and we know that they could come in. We're listed at 300. We know they can come in at 290 and we'll consider it, but they
Right.
don't.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do to get more people in the door? Because without that, and I'm doing what I can to make that happen.
Right.
Without that, so let's talk about adjusting the price. That's really what my script is.
Well, and that's exactly why those Monday conversations like you have and I have, those weekly check-ins on like, here's what I'm doing, right? That's how it all ends up working because you're able to say, well, we're not getting showings. We're doing everything. You know, we've been sending mailers, you know, we've done open houses, you know, we've been marketing on MLS or social media rather. Um, there's only one thing left that we can really have a conversation about to get those showings up, right? So,
Right.
and now it's kind of like that awkward, like, what else do you think it is moment, right? Um,
Hmm.
and what we do is we say you need about 10 to 12 showings to get an offer, right? And if we're not getting 10 to 12 showings, if we're getting two a week or even sometimes two a month, is that a ratio? Is that speed in alignment with your goals?
Right. Right.
So it's not about me. Listen, I'll market the house as long as you'd like me to market it and sell it because I'm committed to that. And
Hmm.
if we're only getting two showings a month and we know we need 10 to 12, is two showings a month in alignment with your goal of getting the house
Right.
sold? No, I need to
Right.
be in it I need to be out of this place in like 2 months or less. Okay, well, we need to have a bigger conversation and make that return higher, that
Hmm.
showing return
Hmm.
much higher. So I love that we're kind of on that same wavelength of like how many, it's really should be based off showings, right? And
Yeah.
how much people are
Yep.
coming in. Do you use any type of tools? Like what visual reports are you using? I mean, I'm sure your MLS has specific ones.
Yeah, so the general CMA, but I'm using that in the very beginning to price
Mhm.
it. Also I don't show it to them, but I do look at the market stat reports in the MLS because that tells me like how many months of inventory we have, what's the average days on market, what's the average price point, and I can use that in my conversation. Visually, I don't think that there's anything like that well, one thing that I'll do sometimes is okay, there's two houses that have sold since we've been on the market. Let's look at them. And we
Mhm.
go on, to go online and look at them visually to see what is it about this house that's sold and not yours if they're in the same neighborhood type of thing. But no, like I don't have a specific presentation that I do for a price reduction because I'm very straight and to the point. I'm not, like I said, I'm not aggressive to the point, but I am straight and to the point. This is what it is. This is the information. I'm going to listen to you and how you feel about it. And then let's come to something that's a mutual decision. Because you have to also be careful. I feel that if you're too aggressive, then they'll just think you're about the paycheck.
Right. Right.
And then they're going to be even more stubborn than they would normally be because they think it's just about you. And
Hmm.
it's not, it's about the client. So as long as they feel that way, I think you can have a productive conversation. There's always going to be the extremely stubborn seller I've seen listings that have been on the market for 8 months and the prices never change. And I don't know if that's the agent or the seller, but I'm like, they are crazy, right?
Sometimes a little bit of both, like,
Sometimes a little bit of both, but
you
you
know.
have to have some empathy in that conversation because otherwise it's not going to go anywhere.
Well, and I think that's where we come back to that continuing to have those expectations throughout the transaction, right? Continuing to check in, make sure that, like I said, with is what's happening right now in alignment with our goals, your goals, not mine. I'm selling the
Hmm.
house no matter what. That's the
Hmm.
way that I kind of have been able to be that dominant personality that I am, but also like still kind of you know, make this more about them
Right,
than it is about you.
right.
And I think that's a lesson too that people who are newer to this shifting market should learn is that this is the reason why listing inventory and having listing inventory is so important. Because if you have one listing as an entrepreneur and you can't sell it, you're a little bit too attached to the outcome on it,
Mhm.
right? Where if you have enough listings and enough ways to funnel out and get things under contract, you're able to kind of come up with these things that Kimberly has come up with in a more progressive way, right? In a more
Mhm.
productive way, I should say. And you don't really need the visual tools. I only use the visual tools if I'm like desperate. And I'm like,
Right.
please, let's
Again,
do it in
I use
person.
it more in the beginning, right?
Right,
And I will
exactly.
say, I guess I'm a little selfish at the listing appointment and I make it a little bit about me because I'm the professional.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's been in and out of homes. I'm the one that has seen what's the inventory. I'm the one that studies this. So, seller, when I tell you this number, I want to get you the most that you can get. And I'm telling you this number because I think that this is the most that you can get. And I almost catch myself as saying, if I thought you could get more, I could get paid more. Wouldn't that make sense, right? I don't say that, but in,
I
in
know,
my
but yeah,
mind, I'm like,
yeah.
there's a reason I'm giving you this. It's because I have done this for a long time and you have not.
Well, and that's what I tell part of what I tell clients is my job is not to tell you what to do, it's to tell you what happens when you decide what you want to do. Right? Like I'm not here to tell you that you need to not overprice your house, but my role is to tell you what happens when you do.
Right,
Right?
right,
That's what you want from me, isn't it? You want me to be
right.
honest with you, right? This
Yes.
is just kind of that transparency that we want to provide to people, while at the same time getting them moving towards the direction that they know that they need to go
Yeah,
ultimately.
and I'll add that I also will blame the market. It's not me, it's not you, but this is what the market is saying. I use that a lot. This
Yeah,
is what the market is saying.
yeah.
And
It's
it's,
not, yeah, I mean, it's not ultimately it's not our
I
decision.
interpret it. I
It really
interpret it,
isn't.
but
Yeah.
I don't force it. I don't choose its path. This is just what it is.
Right. And it's just what the market is telling us. And that's why I think like having knowing that motivation and knowing people's why as to why they're selling becomes more and more important, in the very beginning, so you can
Mhm.
prepare yourself for those conversations.
Yes.
Do you ever feel like handling price reductions can make the home seem problematic? Do you ever get that objection? Like where people are like,
Yes.
what do you feel about that?
I tell them it's not that there's something, because they'll say people will think something's wrong with my house. No, I think that people will see that you're ready to sell it and you're ready to make a deal
Yeah.
and that you're adjusting the price for that. They also may see that this is a correction, that we started off maybe a little too high and now we've corrected it for the market.
Hmm.
Not that something's wrong with your house, because anyone that looks at it and sees the description and looks at the photos and comes in the door will know that it's not that something's wrong with it.
Yeah.
And every buyer is not the buyer for your house. So,
True. Well, and I could be so dominant in my personality to say back, yeah, there is something wrong with it. It's not selling. I mean, you're right. There absolutely is something wrong. It isn't selling, and lowering the price puts you one step closer to that. And I've had the conversation with sellers where they say, well, I don't want to reduce the price. And then, someone comes in and they're still going to try to reduce me, right? They're still going to
right.
try to lower the price. And
Mhm.
what I tell them is, I hear you. And if I don't reduce the price now, they're going to do that anyway. They're going to come in and lowball us no matter what. If I reduce the price now and I get an offer in 2 days, at least I can say we just reduced the price. We're solid. Not I haven't touched it in 30 days. I'm basically telling you to reduce it, to come in and lowball me because I'm not the one who's willing to commit to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think my response to that is you're still in control. So
Hmm.
we reduce this price and they come in another 30,000 less. You don't have to take it.
Exactly.
You're still in the driver's seat of this situation. And that gives them some empowerment, right? Even though when it comes in $30,000 less, I'm still trying to negotiate them
Of course. Yeah.
close as possible, right? But they need to know that they are the ones that are in charge. Sometimes that's an ego thing. So I say that it doesn't matter what other people are going to come in at. We want to be at the price that's going to activate a sale. And hey, if that price at least gets us an offer, at least we have something to work with.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and that's, where we're talking about you all getting everyone who listens to this having an understanding of the skill set you need to be a listing agent and to list property in a shifting market or a shifted market. It is so much of these conversations, not just around price reduction, but also in your ability to negotiate when you are reducing by a price and you are getting a low ball offer and you have to work with that offer. You can't
Yeah.
just say no to it, right?
Right.
You've got to be in control of the situation, have the skills to do that.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think what's some advice I would ask on like repositioning a listing in a fresher way after a reduction? Do you have any tactics for that after a price reduction?
Yes, so I do an updated marketing piece, which is a picture of the house, my information at the bottom and everything. And we have like a banner that goes across it. So it's covering part of the house and it says price improvement. And then I just talk about it again and say, now being offered at blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I put that out there pretty much within 24 hours of that price adjustment on all socials. And then I will put it out into my office as well. And I send out a note to anyone who has shown it so that they know we're at a new price.
Right.
One of the other things that we have access to in our MLS that I do periodically is a reverse prospecting
Hmm.
system. So I can go in and tell any agent that, my email says your client saw this and it grabs their attention enough to actually look at what I'm saying because we get 10 million emails out every day. And so that just
Not
gives
for
them,
me. Yeah. Not for
right?
me. Hmm.
So then they look at who it was, what client saw it, and maybe now it's in a price range that they can work with, right? So I'm just doing new marketing out there as soon as that happens and making sure everyone that saw it knows.
Right. And I think that's something that you also can utilize in the conversations you're having with the seller around price reductions because the reality is I could keep marketing your home every day at this price, but I'm not telling them anything different than the last time I marketed it. By reducing the price, I now have something that I can market. Oh, and by the way, here's my promise of what I'll do when we do that reduction. So I'm also committing to that reduction and the efforts behind it and not just asking them to do something without some type of reciprocal reaction to that.
Right. Every time I get that price adjustment, I say to them, okay, now I'm going to send out new marketing now that we had that, and I'm going to let everybody know that's come in that this is the new price. Every time, so that they know there is a cause and effect to this in some
Mm,
ways, right? So I think they appreciate that too.
for sure, for sure. Now, you and I are both part of the community, and wouldn't be clear and successful without asking, how do you feel like you build your voice and your confidence as a marginalized person, right, in these kind of hard conversations? Or how do you maybe think that's like set you apart from others?
It's a great question. I don't know that it set me apart. I think that I have a strong voice because I've made it so.
Mm,
Through years, through experience, through just getting through some of the challenges of life that I've come to this point where I'm always going to advocate for myself and those that I care about. So, because of that, I have a strong voice. It took me a minute to get here. It has not always been that way, but I think at a certain point, anyone can relate of feeling like you're consistently battling right out of this space that you're in, or feeling like you are being treated less than. At a certain point, you get tired of it.
yeah,
And so I just have used that to increase my voice and be as confident as possible. I also make sure that I have studied everything and make sure that I'm very confident in what I'm saying. So that's not just like, oh yeah, I think this might work, right? Isn't
right.
that's not going to do it. So I think that's what it is. I gained my voice at a certain point. And so yes, things still happen to me. Yes, I'm still discriminated against. I lost a listing recently that grinded my gears because there was some of that in there.
Oh,
Um,
fun.
but it is what it is. And it's funny. I love going back and looking at those listings to see how it sold for exactly what I thought it was going to sell at. That's my little way of being, of having a little happiness in that situation. But I'm confident in it. And even when that came to me in that listing appointment, I addressed it
Mhm.
with a like no frills or no nonsense type of attitude, and it's just what it is.
Yeah, I think that we have the ability to defend ourselves and to advocate for ourselves, and we have to do that in life so much. And that gives us a lot of perspective in how we advocate for other people in uncomfortable conversations like this, right? You're able to kind of approach it in a way that you're advocating for a seller to get the results that they need, right? We're not going to kind of like rest on laurels, or we're not going to just put a sign in the yard and hope for the best, right?
Hmm.
We're going to
Hmm.
truly advocate for others the way that we advocate for ourselves in both life and business. And we kind of approach it and have a different balance or a different approach to that because of the balance that we've had to have in finding our voice and our confidence. And a lot
Yeah.
of that confidence comes from educating ourselves at a higher level, like you said. And
Yep.
that's why you and I are both instructors, right? We understand that education is so important, and you learn really well when you teach things too,
Absolutely.
and you're
Yes.
like, hey, I need a price reduction. I even teach this. So like I know what I'm talking about, right?
Right, right, right.
Have you ever had to unlearn a pricing strategy, or do you think there's any pricing strategies out there that don't work or that do work, or that you're like, hey, I don't think that, this should be what we do now, or what do you think for that? Like, should they be doing like 2K or 10% or 5%? Like, what should they be doing?
I am not one that goes with percentages.
Hmm.
I go with what I see because, I'm looking at the market. And now I will say that I'm a even dollar sign type of girl. I'm
Yeah,
I'm not the 249.9
I hate
or
that.
the
I know you too.
249.5.
I'm the
I
same way. Yeah.
250, 230, 220. I just think, for one thing, I just think the searches are much better that way. Um, but no, I don't go by percentages. I just go by where I see in the market. I pride myself on being really good at pricing. And I tell clients that I pride myself on being very good at the way that I price homes. Have there been a couple of hiccups? Sure, but we've corrected it, right? So I just give them, this is what I'm seeing in the market. Let's move it to this number. And sometimes that's tailored to the client because I already know who my price averse people are. I can't drop them $50,000. I just can't. I have to
Yeah.
slow walk them a little bit, but I'll slow walk them faster. So instead of it being a price reduction now and another in 2 weeks, it might be a price reduction now and another one in a week to get to where I wanted to be in 2 weeks, right? So it depends on the client, it depends on the market and the neighborhood, but I'm not really a stickler for a certain percentage.
I taught a class last year in a location. I'm not going to say any of that. I have a tendency to be like trying to hide something and then actually like telling who it was. But there was a person who tried to get on me about me saying that, sometimes incremental price drops that are more often work just as well as a 5 to 10% reduction. And they kind of like jumped on me because they were like, no, 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 the book says, 5% to 10%. Um, but I think we're missing, like you mentioned, the human aspect of that, where like, the client, they're not going to drop by 50K, right? You know that they don't have the room to do that. And so,
Right.
don't be afraid to do whatever it takes to move the needle when we're having these conversations about price reductions, whether it needs to be 5K or 2K or 1,000 every 3 days. At least you're getting the needle moving. That's my opinion. Y'all can come for me with pitchforks later. Uh, but I know it's really not about my ego or perception on what everyone else thinks as much as it is about how we're helping the client with
Yes, I agree.
right? With how we're helping the
Yep.
client with their goals and what they need from us.
Mhm.
As we kind of wrap up and open this conversation up to any discussion, for any agents who may be listening who are struggling with listings that aren't moving, right? What's the first question they should ask themselves today before jumping to a reduction?
What have you done so far?
Mm.
What have you done so far? Or as Janet Jackson said, what have you done for me lately?
Right. What have you done? Have you
What
actually
have
been?
you done? Have
Yeah.
you marketed it? Have you done professional photos? Is it a space where an open house would be necessary? Have you maybe called some folks, maybe circle prospect? Like, what have you done before you jump to that?
Hmm.
And maybe part of what you have done is you have done the due diligence to know where the price should be. And so, okay, great. Then maybe that is your next conversation. But that's the first thing, because that's the first thing a seller is going to think is what
True.
have you done?
It really
Like,
is.
look inside first. Make sure you've done all of that. That way you can go to the seller with the price reduction as well as these are the things that I've done thus far.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for having this conversation with us, because it's going to be, if it's not happening to you yet, it's going to be happening to you.
Going to,
It's going
yes.
to eventually, right? We need to always
Yes.
be prepared for this. So thank you for your insight, Kimberly. I
Welcome.
appreciate it. Thanks for listening today, friends. If you enjoyed this call, do not forget to join Queer and Successful, the community on Facebook, as well as register to participate in these calls live every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern at successfulcall.com. See you next time. Bye.